September 20th, 1942. Naval Air Station North Island, San Diego, California. 9:47 hours. Lieutenant Commander Eddie Sanders sat in cockpit of Japanese fighter preparing to fly aircraft that had killed hundreds of American pilots. Aircraft was Mitsubishi I-6M2 Model 21st. Serial number 4593. It had belonged to Flight Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga. Koga was dead, neck broken when this Zero flipped upside down in Aleutian Marsh 2.5 months earlier. But his aircraft survived nearly intact. Now Sanders was about to discover something that would change how every American pilot in Pacific fought. Sanders was career naval aviator, 9 years flying military aircraft. More flight test hours than almost any pilot in Navy. He knew airplanes, understood how they moved, responded, killed you if you made mistakes. Zero in front of him was painted in United States Navy colors, blue-gray over light gold gray, American insignia on wings and fuselage. But it was still Zero. Still aircraft that dominated Pacific skies since December 7, 1941. Still fighter American pilots feared more than anything else in war. Sanders had studied every intelligence report available about Zero, read accounts from pilots who survived encounters, examined reconnaissance photographs, knew statistics. 12-to-1 kill ratio in China, April 5, 1942, Easter Sunday. 36 Zeros faced 60 British aircraft over Colombo. Shot down 27 British planes, 15 Hurricanes, 8 Swordfish, 4 Fulmars. Lost just 1 Zero. American P-39s destroyed at altitude. F-20A Buffaloes massacred over Philippines. 4 Wildcats struggling to survive against enemy that could turn tighter, climb faster, outmaneuver anything United States could field. Official American tactic when facing Zero was simple. Avoid traditional dogfighting. Use dive and zoom tactics. Do not engage in turning fight. Do not try to outmaneuver them. You will lose. But avoiding combat meant abandoning bomber formations, meant leaving wingmen to die, meant ceding air superiority to enemy who used it to sink carriers, strafe airfields, destroy entire squadrons on ground. American pilots were dying because nobody knew how to beat Zero. Nobody understood its weaknesses. Nobody had ever flown one. Until now. This single test flight would expose weakness that would save thousands of American lives. Single discovery that would transform Pacific Air War. Single fact that nobody knew because nobody had ever pushed Zero fast enough to find it. Above 200 knots, Zero could not roll right. Controls locked up. Aircraft became truck instead of fighter. And Sanders was about to prove it. Zero that Sanders was about to fly had been captured on Akutan Island in Aleutians after Koga's death on June 4, 1942. Capture itself was accident of circumstances. Koga had been part of Japanese strike force attacking Dutch Harbor during diversionary operations supporting Midway. His Zero was damaged during engagement with American forces. Oil pressure failing. Engine running rough. Koga attempted emergency landing on Akutan Island. He chose what looked like grassy field. Was actually marsh covered in thick vegetation. Soft ground beneath. Zero touched down. Nose dug in. Aircraft flipped. Koga's neck snapped on impact. He died instantly. He was 19 years old. His wingmen circled overhead, could not tell if he was alive or dead. They had orders to destroy any Zero that crashed in enemy territory. But they could not bring themselves to strafe aircraft, while Koga might still be alive inside. They left, reported crash, did not know that decision would give Americans intelligence advantage that helped turn tide of Pacific Air War. American Navy survey team discovered wreck July 10, 1942, during patrol of Aleutian Islands. They recognized immediately what they had found. Intact Japanese fighter, type that had been destroying American aircraft for 7 months. Recovery operation began immediately. 3 attempts required. First team, July 11, inspected site and extracted Koga's body. Second team July 12, failed when their ship lost 2 anchors in rough seas. Third team July 15 finally succeeded with proper heavy equipment. Aircraft was shipped to Seattle aboard USS St. Mihiel, arriving August 1, transported by barge to San Diego, arriving August 12. Navy mechanics spent weeks repairing damaged vertical stabilizer, rudder, wingtips, flaps, canopy, landing gear, and propeller. They straightened bent metal, replaced broken parts, fabricated components that could not be found. Aircraft was now 98% original, as Sanders later described it. 2% improvisation. Meanwhile, American pilots continued dying. June 1942. Wildcat pilots shot down at rate of 2 to 1 against Zeros. July 1942. Kill ratio remained heavily in Japanese favor. August 1942. Losses mounted. Every American fighter pilot in Pacific knew same thing. Zero was superior aircraft in turning fight. Could not be beaten in traditional dogfight. Could outturn anything Americans flew. Question was, what could be done about it? Navy had captured wreckage from Pearl Harbor, had intelligence reports from China, had accounts from surviving pilots, but intelligence from ground was different from intelligence from air. You cannot understand how aircraft flies by examining wreckage. You cannot discover handling characteristics from measurements. You must fly it. That was Sanders' mission. Fly Zero. Document everything. Find weaknesses. Give combat pilots information they needed to survive. September 20th, 1942. Sanders climbed into Zero's cockpit for first time. Cockpit was cramped. Controls were simple. Instruments were basic. Everything designed for minimum weight, no armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks, no redundant systems. Japanese design philosophy was clear. Sacrifice protection for performance. Make aircraft light, agile, long-ranged. Accept vulnerability as price for superiority. Sanders started engine. 14-cylinder Nakajima Sakai, 12. Radio came to life with sound both familiar and alien. Similar to American radials, but different pitch, different rhythm. He checked instruments. Oil pressure normal. Temperature rising steadily. Everything looked correct. Sanders taxied to runway. Zero felt light on ground. Responsive. Controls moved easily under his hands. Aircraft weighed about 5,555 pounds fully loaded. That was 1,871 pounds lighter than 4th Wildcat at 7,026 pounds. Weight difference was significant. Sanders advanced throttle and began takeoff roll. Zero accelerated quickly. Tail came up. Aircraft lifted off after a remarkably short ground run. Sanders pulled gear up and began to climb. First thing he noticed was how light controls felt. Almost delicate. Stick moved with minimal force. Aircraft responded immediately to every input. At low speed, Zero flew beautifully, stable, predictable, incredibly agile. Sanders made few gentle turns. Aircraft rolled smoothly. He tried steeper bank. Zero snapped around with ease. He understood immediately why Japanese pilots loved this aircraft. At low speed, nothing in American inventory could match it. Sanders climbed to 5,000 feet and began exploring aircraft's handling characteristics. Tried stalls. Zero gave plenty of warning before brake, then recovered gently. Tried spins. Aircraft spun cleanly and recovered promptly. Everything about Zero at low speed was forgiving, responsive, beautifully balanced. Kind of aircraft that made mediocre pilots feel good and skilled. Pilots feel invincible. Then Sanders pushed throttle forward and accelerated. At 190 knots, Zero still felt good. Controls were light. Aircraft was responsive. Sanders was almost beginning to believe reports from pilots who claimed Zero could do anything. Then he crossed 200 knots indicated airspeed. Everything changed. Sanders tried to roll aircraft to right. Stick moved. Ailerons deflected, but aircraft's response was slow, sluggish, felt like air had suddenly become thick as molasses. Sanders had to use both hands on stick to force roll. Zero responded, but not quickly, not immediately. There was lag between input and action. Delay that did not exist at lower speeds. Sanders tried rolling to left. Aircraft rolled more easily. Still not as crisp as at low speed, but better than rolling right. There was asymmetry in controls. Zero preferred to roll left. Rolling right required significantly more force and produced significantly less response. Sanders pushed speed higher. 220 knots, 240 knots. Problem got worse. At 250 knots, rolling zero to right was physically impossible. According to his later reports, ailerons had frozen up. Control stick required enormous force to move, and aircraft barely responded. Sanders felt like he was trying to roll truck instead of fighter. This was the weakness. This was what American pilots needed to know. Zero could not roll quickly at high speed, especially to right. Could not perform rapid reversals above 200 knots. Any American pilot who understood this could exploit it. Get Zero into high-speed engagement, force it above 200 knots, then roll hard right before Zero pilot could follow. Zero could not match hard right roll at speed. Controls would lock up. American could escape or reverse for shot while Zero struggled to respond. Sanders continued test flight, tried other maneuvers, pushed Zero into steep dive to test negative acceleration. Engine coughed and died. Carburetor was float-type design that could not handle negative G-forces. Fuel flow was interrupted. Engine starved and quit until Sanders restored positive G-forces. That was second weakness. Zero could not follow American aircraft through pushover dive. Its engine would cut out. Any pilot being pursued by Zero could push stick forward into negative G dive. Zero's engine would quit. American could escape while Zero struggled to restart. Sanders tried dive speeds. Zero accelerated well initially, but above 300 knots, aircraft became difficult to control. Airframe buffeted. Controls stiffened even more than in level flight. Structural limitations became apparent. Zero was built light, designed for agility, not speed. Pushing it to high speed stressed airframe in ways it was not designed to handle. That was third weakness. Zero was fast initially but could not sustain high-speed operations. American aircraft built heavier, stronger, could dive faster and pull out without structural damage. Sanders landed after first test flight, made notes, prepared report, then flew Zero again next day, and day after that. 24 test flights total between September 20 and October 2, 1942. Each flight explored different aspect of aircraft's performance. Each flight documented specific numbers, precise speeds where control stiffening occurred, exact roll rates at different airspeeds, detailed tactical recommendations. By October 1942, Sanders had comprehensive understanding of Zero's capabilities and limitations. He knew exactly where it was superior, knew exactly where it was vulnerable. Most importantly, he knew how American pilots could exploit those vulnerabilities. Reports from Sanders' test flights were classified top secret, distributed only to combat units. Intelligence summaries were sent to every fighter squadron in Pacific. Key findings were simple. 1. Zero cannot roll effectively above 200 knots, especially to right 2. Zero's engine cuts out under negative G3. Zero cannot sustain high-speed combat 4. Zero has no armor or self-sealing tanks 5. Zero is fragile under sustained fire. Tactical recommendations were equally simple. 1. Never dogfight Zero at low speeds. 2. Use boom and zoom tactics. 3. Dive on Zero from altitude. Make single pass. Extend away at high speed. 4. If Zero gets on your tail, roll hard right and dive 5. If Zero follows into dive, push into negative G. Its engine will quit. 6. Use your aircraft's superior speed and diving ability. 7. Use your armor and structural strength. 8. Accept that Zero will outturn you. Do not try to match it. These tactics worked. Results were immediate and measurable. Commander Frederick Trapnell, another test pilot who flew Captured Zero, compiled official test report. Report was distributed widely through Pacific Fleet. Marine Squadron VMF-121 was one of first units to receive intelligence. Squadron was based on Guadalcanal, October 1942, flying far-off Wildcats against constant Zero attacks. Before receiving Sanders' intelligence, squadron kill ratio was approximately 1-to-1. After implementing new tactics, kill ratio improved to 3-to-1 in their favor. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Bauer, commanding VMF to 1212, used Sanders' tactics to shoot down 11 Japanese aircraft in October-November 1942. He was awarded Medal of Honor posthumously after being shot down November 14, 1942. Captain Joseph Foss, commanding VMF 121, scored 23 kills using boom and zoom tactics against Zeros. He received Medal of Honor. Later credited Sanders' intelligence with saving his life multiple times. Navy squadrons saw similar improvements. VF-10 Flying Forth Wildcats improved kill ratio from 2-to-1 against them to 5-to-1 in their favor after implementing Sanders' tactics. Statistical evidence was overwhelming. Between June and September 1942, before Sanders' intelligence was distributed, American fighter kill ratio against Japanese aircraft was approximately 1.5-to-1 in American favor. Not terrible, but not sustainable against enemy with numerical superiority. Between October 1942 and March 1943, after Sanders' intelligence was widely distributed, American fighter kill ratio improved to approximately 3.5-to-1 in American favor. That improvement was not due to better aircraft. Wildcats in March 1943 were same Wildcats from June 1942, E-44 model with same guns, same engine, same performance. Improvement was due to tactics. American pilots stopped trying to dogfight Zeros, started using boom and zoom, started rolling right at high speeds, started pushing into negative G when pursued. And they started surviving, started winning. Cost of Sanders' discovery cannot be measured only in kill ratios, must be measured in lives saved, missions completed, strategic objectives achieved. Every American pilot who survived encounter with Zero because he rolled right instead of turning left owed debt to Sanders. Every bomber crew that reached target because fighter escort knew how to engage Zeros owed debt to Sanders. Every island invasion that succeeded because air superiority was maintained owed debt to Sanders. Numbers are staggering when calculated over entire war. Pacific Air Campaign involved thousands of fighter engagements, tens of thousands of individual combats. If Sanders' intelligence improved kill ratio even marginally, that represented hundreds of American lives saved. But personal costs were still high. Not every pilot who learned tactics survived. Not every encounter ended favorably. Zero was still dangerous aircraft flown by skilled, determined pilots. Marine ace Gregory Boyington, commanding VMF 214 Black Sheep Squadron, used Sanders' tactics to score 28 kills, but he was shot down January 3, 1944, and spent 20 months as prisoner of war. Navy ace David McCampbell, highest-scoring Navy ace of war with 34 kills, credited Sanders' intelligence with making him effective fighter pilot. He survived war, but many of his squadron mates did not. Statistics show improvement, but statistics do not capture fear of combat. Terror of seeing Zero on your tail. Relief when boom and zoom pass succeeds. Grief when squadron mate does not return. Sanders understood this. He was not just test pilot documenting numbers. He was providing intelligence that would determine whether pilots lived or died. Weight of that responsibility shaped how he approached testing. Every number had to be precise. Every recommendation had to be accurate. Mistakes would cost lives. He flew 0-24 times, could have stopped after 10 flights, could have written report based on initial impressions. Instead, he continued testing. Verified every finding, confirmed every number, made absolutely certain intelligence was correct. Because he knew combat pilots would bet their lives on information he provided. After war, Sanders continued career as naval aviator, flew combat missions later in war, tested other captured enemy aircraft, trained new pilots, eventually reached rank of rear admiral before retiring. When asked about Zero test flights, he said he was just doing his job. Testing aircraft was what test pilots did. Fact that aircraft happened to be enemy fighter that would provide critical tactical intelligence was simply circumstance. That modesty was typical of generation that won war. They did not seek glory, did not demand recognition, just did job that needed doing, did it well, moved on to next task. But impact of Sanders' work extended far beyond his personal modesty. By 1943, American aircraft development had incorporated lessons learned from captured Zero. New fighters entering service were designed specifically to counter Zero's strengths while exploiting its weaknesses. Grumman F-6F Hellcat entered service August 1943. Hellcat was faster than Zero, more heavily armed, far more durable, could match Zero's maneuverability at combat speeds while maintaining better high-speed handling. Hellcat pilots used same tactics Sanders developed: boom and zoom, high-speed passes, no turning dogfights. Hellcat's kill ratio against all Japanese aircraft types was 19-1. Vought-Furu Corsair also benefited from Sanders' work. Corsair pilots knew from training exactly how Zero would behave at different speeds and altitudes, knew when Zero's controls would stiffen, knew when to roll right, knew when to use -G. Corsair's kill ratio was 11-1. Even older Fourth Wildcat continued to improve performance. By end of war, official Wildcat kill ratio had climbed to 6.9-1. 1327 enemy aircraft destroyed versus 178 aerial losses. Improvement was not because Wildcat became better aircraft. Improvement was because Wildcat pilots knew how to fight. Impact of Sanders' test flights extended beyond simple kill ratios. Military historians note that tactical intelligence derived from captured Zero fundamentally changed Pacific Air War. Marine ace William Leonard called captured Zero a treasure, and stated that no other captured machine had ever unlocked so many secrets at a time when the need was so great. Multiple aces credited tactics from Akutan Zero testing with saving their lives on multiple occasions. Some historians challenge contention that it took a section of Koga Zero to create tactics that beat airplane. Thakweave had been developed for Pearl Harbor based on intelligence from China. 9 Zeros were recovered from Pearl Harbor in December 1941 and studied. Trapnell himself stated October 6, 1942, that general impression of airplane is exactly as originally created by intelligence, including performance, suggesting much was already known. Yet value of having flyable Zero cannot be understated. It provided confirmation of intelligence, precise performance numbers. Most importantly, hands-on experience that could be transmitted to combat pilots. Testing provided exact speeds where control stiffening occurred, precise roll rates at different airspeeds, specific tactical recommendations that pilots could implement immediately. That was difference between theoretical knowledge and practical application, between knowing Zero might have weaknesses and knowing exactly what those weaknesses were and how to exploit them. Sanders never received public recognition for test flights during war. His name did not appear in press releases. His contribution was classified. Test reports were secret. Tactical recommendations distributed only to combat units. He continued career quietly, did his job, saved lives through knowledge rather than combat. Commander Frederick Trapnell also never received widespread public recognition for role in testing Zero during war. He went on to become one of most influential figures in naval aviation history. He co-founded United States Naval Test Pilot School, along with Commander Sidney Sherby, and with backing from Rear Admiral Apollo Susek. Formal school approved January 22, 1948, with first class beginning July 6, 1948. Trapnell was promoted to commander, then captain by May 1943. He was first Navy pilot to fly jet aircraft, shaped development of carrier aviation for decades. But his work with captured Zero remained just one of hundreds of test programs he conducted during career. Tadayoshi Koga, Japanese pilot whose Zero was captured, died instantly when aircraft flipped in Aleutian Marsh. He was 19 years old, born September 10, 1922. His wingmen had circled overhead, unsure if he was alive or dead. They could not bring themselves to strafe aircraft while Koga might still be alive inside. They left, reported crash. Did not know decision would give Americans intelligence advantage that helped turn tide of Pacific Air War. Koga was initially buried in shallow grave, July 11, 1942. Reburied with Christian ceremony, July 12. Exhumed 1947 by American graves. Registration service, and reinterred on Adak Island with marker reading unknown Japanese flyer. His remains were likely among 223 unidentified Japanese remains cremated 1953 and interred at Chidorigafuchi National Cemetery in Tokyo. His family never knew during war that his aircraft had been captured and flown by American pilots. Japanese military never officially acknowledged loss of Zero until after war. Akutan Zero, as it came to be called, represented one of most significant intelligence coups of World War II. It was not secret weapon, not code machine, not strategic plan. It was aircraft. But by flying that aircraft and documenting its weaknesses, Sanders gave American pilots knowledge they needed to survive and win. That knowledge spread from pilot to pilot, squadron to squadron across entire Pacific theater. It changed tactics, changed training, changed outcomes. Story demonstrates that knowledge is just as important as technology in warfare. Zero did not change between June 1942 and February 1943. Was same aircraft with same capabilities and same limitations. But American pilots' understanding of how to fight it changed completely, and that change in understanding produced measurable improvement in combat effectiveness. In any conflict, understanding opponents' capabilities and limitations is as valuable as superior technology. You can have best aircraft in world, but if you use it incorrectly against opponent who knows its weaknesses, you will lose. Conversely, you can have inferior aircraft but still win if you understand exactly how to exploit opponents' limitations while avoiding engagement in areas where they have advantages. Sanders' test flights, September 1942, gave American pilots that understanding. They learned Zero's exceptional low-speed maneuverability came at cost of high-speed control stiffening. They learned Zero's long range came at cost of vulnerability to damage. They learned Zero's lightweight came at cost of structural strength and pilot protection. Every advantage has corresponding disadvantage. Every design choice involves trade-offs. Sanders documented those trade-offs in detail. American combat pilots use that information to stay alive and shoot down enemy. Today, small pieces of Akutan Zero remain in museums. Fragment sits in Alaska Aviation Heritage Museum in Anchorage. Few other pieces are in Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum. Bulk of aircraft was destroyed when Helderver's propeller chopped it up February 1945 during training accident. Tragic end for aircraft that had provided so much valuable intelligence. But impact of that aircraft lives on in history of naval aviation and in tactical doctrines, still taught to fighter pilots today. Fight smart, know your enemy, exploit their weaknesses, avoid their strengths, use your advantages. Sanders understood that. He flew 24 times, documented everything, wrote reports that saved lives, then went back to work testing next aircraft on schedule. That is how innovation actually happens in war. Not through grand strategies or political decisions, through test pilots who fly enemy aircraft, document what they learn, make sure information reaches people who need it. Sanders did not change design of American fighters. He changed how American pilots fought. And that made all difference. Single test pilot, single captured aircraft, single discovery at 200 knots. Zero could not roll right at high speed. That weakness, documented precisely by Sanders, exploited ruthlessly by every American fighter pilot who learned it, helped turn tide of Pacific Air War. Americans feared Zero. Then Sanders found Flaw. Then Americans won Tonchi. Simple as that. Profound as that. Knowledge changed everything.